Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Puppet Masters and Castle Freaks, the internet's leading all things Charles Band podcast. I am one of your hosts, the Iron Sarge himself, Jared Hornbeck, coming to you from Brooklyn, New York. And in case you are wondering, I am the host who traded all of his full moon cards for a pack of Luckies. But I am not patrolling this Italian wilderness alone. Who's here with me?
Well, it is I, funny-looking gizmo Steve Guntley, and this is the podcast about crazy Nazi experiments, alien eggs, and pineapples in the tailpipe. And that's because this is a podcast about Zone Troopers, a gleefully silly sci-fi war adventure from the creators of Trancers. Hoot and a half, this damn movie. I had so much fun watching this. It's so silly. It's so fun. And I'm excited that we have a full platoon here to help us cover this monumental feat of mid-'80s filmmaking. Who's here with us today, Jared?
So, if you're a fan of our show, then you're probably a fan of other shows that do these deep dives into cult movies from the 80s and the 90s. So, there's a wonderful podcast that you might have heard of called Podcasting After Dark. There are two hosts to that show, Corey Stevenson and Zach Schaefer, who meticulously break down every movie scene during their movie reviews. But that's not the only show that they do. They actually put out 3 other monthly shows too. I swear I'm not getting paid by them to say this. 3 other monthly shows called the TV Obscura, 80s Kids Unite, and the Coscarelli Factor. And I have to tell you, as a big fan of Don Coscarelli, that one is high up there on my list. Both of them are here to talk about Zone Troopers with us. So what's up, Corey and Zach? How's it going?
Hey, guys. Thanks for having us.
You're very
thrilled
welcome
to be here and be with some real full moon fanatics.
Absolutely. And I'm starting to realize just from our pre-show conversation that you two are probably more qualified to host our show than we are based on looks like you might be old school fans, whereas kind of gradually coming into it.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys knew this, but this isn't actually a podcast episode. We're kind of just turning the show over to you now. So it belongs to you from here on out.
Just hit the lights on the way out. Yeah.
You got 3 hours because that's how long it'll take us to do a breakdown.
Yeah, seriously.
Well, what I love about shows like that is that I was going to say famously, that's using the word very liberally. On our show, we don't really go through beat by beat breakdowns of the plot. I mean, we talk a lot about the history and the production and some behind the scenes stuff and personal anecdotes and things like that. But I do enjoy when I listen to other people's podcasts when they actually do break the plots of the movie down, because I'm just like, we don't really do that on ours too much. And so, but included with all of the other stuff that you guys talk about. And I've listened to your show and I'm a fan. You guys do an excellent job.
Oh, thank you. And I'm a fan of yours as well. So I've been,
likewise.
Yeah.
Well, we appreciate
sure to. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry. We're excited that you're here because you were showing us that you guys are old school full moon Empire fans going all the way back. And so I'm curious why, with your depth of experience and deep fandom, did you want to talk about Zone Troopers in particular?
I always wanted to watch it. I had never seen it before, and I think Zach's the same way, right? So we kind of
yeah. Surprisingly, this was one that escaped my rental store days back when I was a kid, and always saw the video box art. Was always intrigued by it. And of all of the movies that we could have chosen, I'm like, let's go with this one because it has a cast of people that I love, and B, it's the fact that I've never seen it, and C, just sheer curiosity.
I love that as motivation. We offer our guests when they come on, it's like, okay, is there a movie you want to talk about in particular, or do you want to kind of spin the wheel? And it sounds like you kind of chose the spin the wheel option, which is the one I would choose. I think I would want to just like find something random and discover it, because I do consider Zone Troopers a bit of a discovery. I have to say, I don't know if y'all had as much fun with it as I did, but I was just like grinning this whole dumb movie.
Well, it's funny you say that because, Corey and I have broken down quite a few full moon films in our catalog, and the ones we've chosen primarily have been ones that we like really love, specifically Trancers and Dr. Mordred. Yeah. But this one in particular, I was like, let's just go for it. We'll see what happens, and definitely things to get excited about. And there's things that, may not be that exciting to talk about.
Well,
I think the cast, though, is one of the most exciting aspects of this movie. I mean,
sure.
I never, ever get tired of Tim Thomerson or Art LaFleur, or Hal. Was it Hal Ash? What was his name in Trancers, Zach?
Yeah, Hal Ashby.
Yeah,
Hap
Ashby. Yeah.
So like, it's such an awesome core cast. Timothy Van Patten. We loved him in Class of '84.
Yeah.
But he's, I didn't quite love him here, but not knowing that going into it, just on the surface, like I was like, this cast is a freaking banger right here.
It really is. It's the whole Trancers crew kind of coming back for just another round, and that's just a really fun idea. It's clear that they all had a good time working with each other. It's just like, yeah, let's dress up like soldiers and go play around in the woods for a while. Like, I don't know, that's got that kind of energy.
Yeah, and Timothy Van Patten, he kind of stands out to me in this movie more so. I mean, Class of '84, I like him, and there's other things I've seen him in where I'm just like, he always seems a little bit out of place, because in a movie like this, which is very much of a period and of a specific place, although they are American soldiers displaced, he always just sounds to me like a guy who would be like outside my apartment screaming on the corner.
Yeah,
like he's got like a real Brooklyn energy to him. I can't ignore it hearing him talk, which is just funny. But I think this movie. Oh, go ahead, Steve.
Also, I recognized his name, and then I looked into him a little bit, and he's another one of those guys who's stealthily one of the most successful Full Moon Empire alums, because he went on. He stopped acting in the late 80s, but he became a television director. Right. He's directed more episodes of The Sopranos than anyone else, 20 episodes. He also directed the majority of Boardwalk Empire, won 2 Emmys for that. Like, some of the better episodes of Game of Thrones. Like, he's a prestige, like, TV director.
Well, see, that's what you can do with your career when you get that White Shadow money.
Exactly. Yeah, everyone was
ask your grandparents about that one, folks.
Everyone was just like laughing all the way to the bank after The Wrong Guys. Yeah, they were.
I would throw in The Master as well if you're a fan of Lee Van Show Kasugi, because he stands out in that as well. He does. He plays a very similar. He's like you're right, Jared. He has like a cadence with the way he talks and like his attitude, and he stands out in everything, for good or bad. I would tag on to what Corey was saying about Zone Troopers, that if this film did not have the cast it had, it would feel like a trauma film where these guys are just running through the forest. I was telling my son, because he was asking me to describe it to him. I said, it's like you going to the park and playing army with your friends and discovering that there's aliens in the park against the Nazis as well.
Yeah, and that was kind of the energy I did very much enjoy about the film, because I mean, I went to film school, and as a kid, I would take my dad's 1980s VHS recorder and go out in the woods and make like little small movies, and do that in camera special effect where you shoot somebody and they disappear, and like it's funny because like, this movie I'm watching, I'm like, it's got a budget to it, it's got real name actors in it, but I'm like, but I feel like I could have directed this when I was like 12, though, and that's not a bad thing. It's more because it invokes this sense of like, it's possible to make a movie. Like, it's possible to go out in the woods with some really great actors and say, let's have some fun and actually make an 85-minute film.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it really is. It really does kind of sell that.
I was at the beach all day today, and I don't know if I'm just like sun drunk, but I feel like I had just like such exuberance for this movie. I feel like kind of maybe the way that like Danny Bilson, Bill Bilson and DeMeo together treated this. Like, it's clearly just like two guys who love adventure serials and love, like old-timey stuff. And they were given a budget, and from what I read in Empire of the Bee, is basically left to their own devices to make this movie however they wanted. And I think that comes across. Like, there's just a real love for the period stuff. And I think you would really see it. I mean, Steve and I think even one or two of our guests have referenced, probably because we've done a few Bilson and DeMeo movies, like we've referenced how much we both really love The Rocketeer.
Mhm.
And
I
this
love that movie.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
this predates that in spirit, I think. Almost would be like a fun double feature to see the progression, you know. I mean, you just kind of have like the Flash TV show in between.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, this actually gives us a chance to talk about basically the entirety of Danny Bilson's directing career. This is where it begins. This is his second project working with Charles Band after Trancers, which was his first project ever. And he and Paul DeMeo co-wrote this script and got to direct it. Now, this is one of only 2 feature films that Danny Bilson directed. The other one was the previously mentioned The Wrong Guys, which was a Louis Anderson, Richard Lewis vehicle that also reunites the entire cast of this. So, like, all of the Zone Troopers walked over to that movie as well. That film bombed. So, yeah, and Danny Bilson directed a couple of TV episodes after that, but he's mostly been focusing on writing. And one thing, we always mention The Rocketeer, and I don't know how I've failed to mention this so far, but Danny Bilson and Paul DeMeo also wrote Spike Lee's The Five Bloods from 2020, which, if you haven't seen it, is a fucking incredible movie that was getting like a lot of Oscar buzz. So it's cool to know those guys are still like out there and doing the thing. Of course, Paul DeMeo is deceased. He passed away a few years ago. But Danny Bilson is still working. Even if directing didn't end up being his thing. It's fun to see them kind of exploring genre here. That's the one thing that keeps coming up every time we encounter Bilson and DeMeo on this show. Anytime anybody talks about them or refers to their directing careers, it's just that these guys are genre savants. Like, they are such nerds for old pulp serials and like science fiction and like horror, and they have a deep like love and a really deep knowledge of this stuff from ever since they were kids. And I think that's kind of the secret sauce that they bring. Like, I could see this movie being like kind of directed by, I don't know, like a Peter Manoogian or something, and just being sort of like tossed off and not really have the same energy as this one. But I think this one really does have like a real love for genre fiction in general.
Oh man, I just had a visual in my brain of Peter Manoogian just crossing our name off of podcasts he'll appear on now.
Oh no,
It's just like, fuck those
I'm
guys.
sorry, I shouldn't have pulled Peter Manoogian.
Well, I love the fact that they have, the comic book aspect in this, because this very much feels like one of these old, sci-fi pulp, comic strips. And, I mean, the design of the alien ship seems like it's straight out of there. Like, it doesn't seem like it's straight out of the 80s. It seems like it's straight out of the 40s or something, and, Zach and I have covered like movies like Them, the Giant Ant movie. And, they really nail sort of the way these old guys or these old actors back in these old war movies sort of, behaved. And on top of it, you have fantastic alien design with the spoiler alert, the female alien, is great. But also too, like, let's, let's give some credit to the normal costumes. Like, all the military guys, the soldiers, both the Nazis and our small platoon of guys, they look great. They look like they have all the right, pouches and stuff like that, like it feels accurate. It doesn't feel like they skimped out on the costumes. Like, a lot of times you'd see that, especially with the cheesy Vietnam movies where all they're doing is wearing like the green drab or something. It felt like they actually, like, Tim Thomerson's backpack had like all kinds of little cool things on it and stuff that I don't know what any of it's called because I'm not from the military, but I was just like, it felt like everything had a layer to it that I really enjoyed.
I think the only thing that's anachronistic is Art LaFleur's weapon.
Right, because it's a Tommy gun, but it's got the muzzle of some kind of a bigger gun.
It's like Anton Chigurh's shotgun with a silencer on it.
Right.
It's like, we'll take some liberties and create this thing for this movie. I think that's really the only thing. I think it's for a movie of this budget, it's surprisingly accurate in terms of a lot of the period details that it has, which I guess is a testament to them in that, like, they knew these are the areas where we need to spend the money, or these are the areas where we need to, so to them, it's like, we're going to get to make this movie about something we really love, and we're going to get to have Mac Allberg there to make it look like a movie.
Yeah.
And so those aspects of it, I think, is what really works. And I'm sure, given what we've spoken about with them and what we know about them, that there probably were very few anachronisms if they were able to control it.
Right. I mean, I agree with the costumes and the production values. I was expecting at a couple points like a rollerblader to kind of come into the shot or something. Like it felt something about like the mid-range shots and like the lack of like immersive, like explosive sound effects or anything like that. It did make it feel like these are really good World War II recreators just in the park, you know?
Yeah, totally. Totally. And, you mentioned like the pulp serial kind of vibe. There was a movie in the 50s called Zombies of the Stratosphere. It starred
Good title.
Leonard Nimoy is one of his first movies he ever did. Actually, might have been the first, but it was like the first appearance of what was kind of like Rocket Man too. And in the costumes in this that the male aliens have very much had that vibe to it, and the ship had the vibe like that Flash Gordon from the 50s vibe. And I love that. I remember seeing an old Full Moon Video Zone with Charles Band way back in the day referencing Plague of the Zombies. I think that's Zombies of the Stratosphere. That's where I first heard about it. I'm like, oh, I gotta go check this out, because he loved that old school serial vibe. And that's what this has. The UK had Doctor Who back in the day, and we had Zombies of the Stratosphere. So 10 years later. But there was definitely a love there. And you just, all those actors, I know we mentioned it already, but anything with Tim Thomerson, I will watch. I'm just everything. Mm-hmm. He brings so much like gravitas to his roles, and again, spoiler, you think he dies at the end, and the fact that he doesn't is so exciting, because you're just like, yeah, that's the guy you want to see live,
and he gets a cool catchphrase and send off at the end. He gets the last line in the movie.
Of course he does.
I mean, he's like effortlessly cool, like effortlessly. He doesn't even have to try. I'm just like, every moment I'm like, dude, you're so freaking cool. But like, personally, like, I love Art LaFleur in this. I love as a kid, I kind of knew him as the sort of the boyfriend's dad or the girlfriend's dad in The Blob, but as I've gotten older, I've seen more and more of him. I'm like, this dude was awesome. Like, I loved, he just had a vibe about him.
I love a character actor with a mug, like an old timey, like 30s.
Yeah, he feels like an old kind of actor, or just sort of out of place in the 80s,
Exactly. Yeah, he looks like he should be chomping a cigar, or something like that. He's cool. And like, to speak of Tim Thomerson again, like he's just clicked in everything that we've watched him in. Like, even like some of the lower, like the lower energy Trancers movies, he's still kind of like, oh yeah, all right, this guy rules. And I think so much of that is due to he already looks like kind of a lantern-jawed leading man, but he didn't set out to be that. He's a stand-up comedian by trade, so he's got a wryness to him that makes that he's kind of in on the joke. He gets how ridiculous this archetype he's playing is, and so it feels like an extra layered comic performance.
He's also a surfer back in the day. I think he still lives in Malibu to this day, but I remember seeing him at a Fangoria convention way back when. We're talking like 1993 or 92. And he did like a stand-up set when he was talking about the movies that he was a part of. And he's so like, he just doesn't, he has a vibe like everything's cool, man. There's that chill vibe to him, but it's not like an I don't care attitude. It's more just like, let's do this, let's have some fun. And that comes across every single time.
Yeah, it's just like a positive attitude, and that's what everybody who's worked with him says. Basically, every person we've connected with that's had any kind of connection with him is just like, yeah, he's the nicest possible dude. He's really supportive on set, and like Helen Hunt pretty much came back to the third Trancers movie, or the second and third Trancers movie, just because she likes Tim Thomerson so much. So, that's not nothing.
Yeah. And I just want to throw this in before we get too far away from what we were talking about. But I think the way that I think of Art LaFleur, as he looks like someone who would work in Dick Tracy's office.
Totally.
Yes.
Like, especially from the old, like, super problematic and racist Dick Tracy cartoon.
Right.
Yeah, and he looks like a Fleischer, Superman cartoon, character come to life. There's no one else looks like Art LaFleur.
It took me a while to place him too, because he's one of those guys. And when we watched Trancers, for the show, which was really early on, only our second episode,
Mhm.
I was like, oh my God, it's Babe Ruth from The Sandlot.
That's it.
Yeah.
That was it.
And
That was the thing for me too.
That was the first connection that I made. And then I started to look back and I go, oh no, but I kind of remember him being in this as well. But I think the more I've seen him pop up, and I think he got a lot of goodwill from me with the way in which his character in the first Trancers time travels into the body of the young girl.
Yes.
With her Art LaFleur mannerisms. It was just super fun. He seemed game, and we've seen him pop up in a handful of things since then. And I think like this is a performance of his that I really like. I think he's having a ton of fun.
I mean, that's another one of my favorite things is just when like character actors or who've often had just like one or two scene like bit parts in movies get to ascend to leading man status. So it's like Art LaFleur is like second build in this movie. That's fucking cool. Like, good for him. That's awesome. He gets so much.
And I almost feel like he gets more screen time than Tim Thomerson in this film. I think he feels like he gets the most screen time.
Hey, he gets to punch Hitler.
He gets to punch Hitler. That's him. That's why we go into film.
Right.
Yeah, we failed to mention before the name of Biff Maynard. Like such a great name.
Yeah. Oh, it's so good. Yeah, another returner from Trancers. And he's really fun here too. He's a reporter who's kind of embedded with this platoon, and he's charged with like writing all this up. And I love that ends up as not a news story, but a pulp story, of course, like the aliens meeting World War II soldiers. I mean, it's such a natural idea too. And I think I'm also very fond in general of World War II genre mashups. Like I think one of the most underrated horror movies of the last 10 years is called Overlord, which is like a zombie Nazi movie from like
I saw that in the theater.
Yeah, me too. And I was like the only one in my theater. I'm like, why are people not seeing this?
It was pretty barren in there.
This thing fucking slaps. It's so good. And like, that's just kind of a fun idea, It's like, I don't know why more horror movies don't go to that setting. Same, like, I don't know why more horror movies don't go to Western settings, because those are both just such natural fits.
Right.
But yeah, so I don't know. I have an affinity for this little subgenre in general.
Before we move too far away, I just wanted to comment that I am a big sucker for the fact that when a movie is named for something inside of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
So at the end, when it was like, oh, the comic or the book that he writes is called Zone Troopers, I was like, there it is.
Yes, I love that. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's a really pretty simple story, and I think as I was watching it, I was early on getting real vibes of like, oh shit, this is Predator. Weirdly, like you see there's an alien with like a kind of weird heat vision, and it's like a military movie, but it has like this science fiction element kind of barging into it. I'm like, all right, this is cool. This is Predator. And weirdly, it winds up being more E.T. with World War II. It's a weirdly heartwarming movie by the end of it.
I always said that was the one thing missing from E.T.
Nazis.
Oh yeah. Spielberg was probably pushing for that. It is. Yeah, he would be.
Well, Mac and Me almost got that right. So with the unexpected deaths at the end with Timothy Van Patten's character dying, you're like, well, I did not see that coming. Just like little Eric in Mac and Me. Well, the original ending to that, by the way.
Oh, they should have left that ending in.
See, all of our thoughts are we're all intertwined here, because I wrote down in my notes that the only thing missing from this movie was a McDonald's montage
with a dancing bear. Come on,
yeah,
Art LaFleur just dancing on the counter with Ronald McDonald.
I mean, really quickly, because we kind of glazed over him. Biff Maynard is like, he almost is like the second lead in this film, right? And for a guy that hasn't really done a whole lot, he clearly has some sort of good reputation with the people that he works with, because I know in the Trancers movie, we talked about how he was kind of intoxicated through quite a bit of it, but I mean, the guy's doing something right, because he keeps getting, it's a sizable role for him, and he does a really good job. Like for a relatively unknown actor, I think mainstream people will watch this movie and go, who's that guy? Versus the other actors will go, I know that guy, I just don't know his name. This is a guy who will go, I don't have any clue who that is, but I really like him. Biff is great.
I think he exemplifies the X factor because he's not good looking, and he, he's not like the best actor. But just like in Trancers, you're like, but I'm really digging his vibe, and I think
Reggie Bannister vibe, right? Right?
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Oh, that's a
that's a
really
good way to
good.
put
That's
it,
a good
yeah.
comparison. Yeah.
I mean,
So
clearly,
he's like 80% X factor and 20% actor.
I mean, clearly Bilson and DeMeo really loved it. They brought him back over and over and over. So he's in multiple Trancers movies. He was a series regular on their Flash TV show.
Right.
Yeah. So they clearly just loved the guy.
I think he's a stand-up comedian too. I think he kind of got his start doing stand-up.
Oh, I would not be surprised. Yeah. Because he's got that kind of vibe.
And Wrong Guys, by the way, is a pretty underrated buddy comedy movie. If you guys ever seen that, in the vein of like moving violations and, kind of like that Police Academy energy to it. So I highly recommend Wrong Guys, because Richard Lewis had just passed away, and I was posting about that. I showed a clip from that film where he's very neurotic through the whole thing. Should I take this jacket on the plane? Should I wear this jacket? The whole bit. And Tim Thomerson's great in that too. So yeah, go check out Wrong Guys. I think it's probably free on YouTube.
Okay. Yeah.
Just like Zone Troopers, guys and gals, if you want to watch it, it's free on YouTube.
There's a pretty good quality rendition on YouTube. Yeah. That is the only way to access it, as near as I can tell. It's not on any of the streaming channels that we could find. But hey, free on YouTube is free on YouTube.
Wrong Guys is a movie that I knew by name. I don't think I knew the ins and outs of like who was really in it and what the plot was. I certainly didn't know beforehand that it was a Bilson and DeMeo movie.
Yeah.
But the crazy thing is I'm looking at the cast right now, and besides the leads and the people from Zone Troopers and Trancers that are in it, we got Richard Belzer, Brian James, John Goodman, Ernie Hudson.
Oh, damn.
Like, this thing is stacked, man. This is going to be one of my early summer vacation watches. If I can
you got to.
It. Yeah,
put it on there. And the only thing it's missing is a score by Richard Band.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, we're nearly there with that. Yeah, it's nearly the whole cast.
Am I correct in, I think I read on IMDb that Tim Thomerson and Brian James were both friends from the National Guard together.
Were they really?
That's what I read on there. I was like, oh, interesting. Obviously big rips to Brian James.
Yeah.
I don't know, though. Is Brian James a reliable narrator? Did he pass that replicant test? I don't know if he did.
Yeah. Touche.
Nice. I do. I want to circle back to Richard Band doing the score for this film, because we interviewed Richard Band on Podcasting After Dark as well, and heck of a nice guy. Just clearly loves what he does. There's a lot of nepotism going on with the Full Moon industry, Full Moon Pictures, but who cares? Like they have a love of the things that we love.
Hey, can I just throw this out for a second, Zach? You know who composed our theme song? My brother.
There you go. See?
You know who I always reference and make fun of on Podcasting After Dark? My brother. So there you go. There's love there. But Richard Band, like, he has composed so many crazy scores, and I just love that there's this in-house factory. Before we have Blumhouse Films or A24, people go gaga over that stuff, and it's totally fine. Full Moon was like, we had Concord Pictures with Corman, right? And we had Troma, which they had their own kind of vibes going on, but Full Moon was very much in its own wheelhouse. Like, these tight 85, 90-minute movies, serial type films. I remember Charles Band saying, I want to keep my movies short, just like these serials are. And
interconnected. Yeah, he was trying to do that for a while. Yeah.
Where you see, and now you turn on Netflix and all the same actors are on every single TV series that you watch. So it's kind of the same deal.
Yeah.
But I love that. Like he was, Zone Troopers is like, I'm again, like, forgot about that film, but every time I saw that poster, I'm like, oh, I want to rent that. But I'm going to go rent this other one. Oh, I'm going to rent that today. Maybe I'm going to rent this one today. I always skirted over it. Maybe the fact that it was PG and I wanted something a little bit edgier. But this is also very accessible for a wide audience. This is a gateway movie for like young people to watch and go, oh, is this what Full Moon movies are like? I'm going to watch more. No, wait, you're 9. Don't watch Puppet Master yet.
Well, it's a good sort of precursor to some Full Moon stuff, because I think when you stack this up against a lot of the other Empire Pictures movies that were coming out at the time, I mean, yeah, this is a lot more gateway and family friendly than Reanimator and then From Beyond and
Right.
so those things that were coming out at the same time. And I mean, okay, so maybe like, well, Ghoulies and Troll, I mean, are both tame in their own way in a lot of ways, maybe more tame than you would expect them to be. I mean, that didn't stop people from, you know, protesting and losing their minds over the release of Ghoulies with its cover art and poster art. But like, it's
That
really like those are
anti-toilet
kind
crowd.
yeah, seriously. But this, I think, yeah, this one is really accessible and it kind of falls at an interesting time because I do feel like there is stuff coming out, transmutations and things like that, and then stuff that we've watched that was Charles Band picking up for distribution through Wizard Video, like Psychos in Love and stuff like that. So yeah, this is very wholesome comparatively, and I do think like it kind of telegraphs maybe even more than Full Moon, like what his mission statement for Moonbeam would be. A friendly alien movie.
No, it's like it's not a family movie per se, but this is, or it's not a kids movie, but it is a movie that feels like it is by kids for kids. You know, like I think y'all put it perfectly. It's just like this is the kind of movie you would make on the playground with your friends. And I think the fact that it has that sweet kind of energy to it, like really carries this one a long way.
Yeah. And I think it sits in it's vibe wise, even though they're drastically different, but I think it can sit on the shelf, next to Terror Vision and whatnot, especially with the tone of it.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
Well, I mean, Ted Nicolau, friend of the show, did edit this movie, as well as a lot of the other kind of Empire heavy hitters. And if you're discovering this show for the first time on this episode and you haven't had a chance to go back and listen to our interview with Ted Nicolau, which dropped a few months back, he was amazing, gave us just, a full hour of wonderful stories and anecdotes, just like the sweetest guy, so game to talk about just about anything. Check out our interview with Ted Nicolau, who would really, in a lot of ways become the patron saint of our show and of Full Moon, because he would be the one that Charlie would ask to handle all of the more prestige projects that would run through Full Moon, and then everything else went straight to Dakota.
Yeah.
Oh, Dakota.
That's another one I'm like, I would really love to talk to Dave Dakota, but I'm worried I've like slandered too many of his films on this podcast.
I don't think so.
He might try and cast you in one of his, teenage zombies go to Vegas / locker room basketball meetups.
I mean, I'm there. I'll do it.
Me too. Are you kidding me? I'd happily do a Dakota film. I'm just saying, you got to know the genre.
Absolutely.
An anonymous script appeared in my mailbox the other day called Voodoo Academy 3, and now I know who it was from.
Oh, there we go.
Dakota.
Sounds like you're summoning him.
I have a running gag. So I run a podcast, a 80s wrestling podcast called Territory Marks with Paul London, who's a former WWE wrestler, and he has some history with David Dakota auditioning for some of his movies, and we always have a running joke. It's almost like Emilio. It's more like Dakota.
Yeah. No, I think he'd be a good sport. Like I would love to have him on the show because he's got so much to talk about. And I'm sure some of these movies were just such a simple paycheck and afterthought that he really doesn't care. If you point out the nitpick, things like that.
He also did Puppet Master 3, which is one of our very, very favorite films that we've covered.
That's my favorite Puppet Master of the series, honestly.
Mine too. Yeah, it's amazing. So, hey, what do I know?
Isn't that the first appearance of the 6-shooter too?
Yeah, absolutely. First 6-shooter. And that's when they kind of started recasting the puppets as like heroic characters instead of villains.
I love
decision. That. Yeah.
Yeah, so, it would be pretty hard to have like puppets that are cornering and dismantling and killing Nazis and not root for them. Would put you in a weird place.
I think the thing is too about like Zone Troopers and all of these movies in general. You get a guy, who knows, maybe you'll get Timothy Van Patten on your show down the road, and you'll bring up Zone Troopers, and he'll be like, "You guys saw that movie? You like that movie? Really? That's really a big deal. Like, you get these guys on and you bring up these deep cuts like Corey and I do on Podcasting After Dark when we interview people, and they just like they're flattered ultimately. Sometimes they're like, oh, let's not talk about that. But most of the time, I interviewed Stuart Fracken on another show for called $2 Late Fee. He was in a movie called Ski School, which I think a lot of people love. And we brought up Moonbeam Entertainment, and he's like, yeah, they normally would shoot their movies in Italy, and they shot this one in Simi Valley, and these people the actors would get lavish vacations in Italy. I didn't. So, but he still looks back at that and he's like, hey, but I did a couple Moonbeam movies with Charles Band's Productions, so Prehysteria, and I think I forget what the other one was, but anyways, like the fact that we remember these things is important. Zone Troopers. Yeah. It should. Corey and I are huge physical media addicts.
Yeah.
And we're proponents for physical media. And I know it seems like Charles Band on his Full Moon website is like tries to get more of his stuff released. Zone Troopers would be a fantastic one to get a physical release.
Well, I've been there's some really good artwork for it out there. They have some great like Zone Trooper artwork. And when I was younger, I only ever knew Zone Troopers as the cover with the creature on it and everything. But then as I've gotten older, and the Instagram circles would be swimming. People post like the image that they use for the YouTube video, and it looks fantastic. Like it's not quite representative of what you're going to see in the movie. But it's still a great piece of artwork that should, it could easily go on a Blu-ray cover, and it should go on a Blu-ray cover on a nice like slipcase or something, or just back, or Zach and I both have the that Arrow, Blu-ray set that was put out. This is
where I was going. I was going to say,
put out another one. Just give us another one.
I want every Empire movie, given even the bottom of the barrel, given the treatment that the movies in the Empire Screams box set were given.
Yeah.
Because there's
gorgeous restoration.
We went through that box kind of quickly in terms of what we covered, with Dungeon Master and Dolls and Robot Jocks and Arena and what's the other one?
Cellar Dweller.
Yeah. Cellar Dweller. Yeah. And those, I felt like they looked gorgeous. Shout out to my friend Heather Buckley for her behind her archival footage that she produced for the special features for that box set.
Cool.
John Tarani for displaying his personal Robot Jocks collection on the special features. But I would love, like, we've sat there, and I feel like this movie, with that cover art or a nice, painted version of it in another box. And obviously, like, Reanimator, From Beyond, they've been released a lot of times. They're both on, I think maybe it's Arrow. Somebody has a 4K of From Beyond coming out soon, but I know there's a 4K from Vinegar Syndrome.
Yeah.
That exists already, and From Beyond and Reanimators on 4K. But some of these, like even the movies that don't really even work as movies, but like have been preserved to look good already, like Vicious Lips. Like I would love Vicious Lips in a box set like that, because it's kind of half a movie with some rad songs in it. But I just want them all archived and given that treatment. I'm like, there's not that many of them. When you look at the list of Empire movies, it's like they could do like 5 box sets.
Yeah, and keep the theme like the the sort of the similar cover art and everything, or that box art. Make it maybe a different video store. But I picked up that box set, for Robot Jocks and Dolls.
Yeah,
I think at the time the Shout Factory Dolls Blu-ray was like on the secondary market, going for like the same price as that Arrow box set. Yeah, and I had just like newly discovered Dolls because I didn't watch it when I was younger, and I was like, I literally discovered it and fell in love with it like a month after it went out of production, out of print, on Shout Factory. And I'm like, well, I'm not paying $100 for this. But then I love Robot Jocks. And so that Arrow box set comes out. I'm like, hell yeah. And I got 3 other movies that I've never seen before, and I can't wait to dive in. But all that to be said is, I don't know if I would necessarily buy a standalone copy of Zone Troopers, but I would absolutely love having it as a part of another box set like that.
Absolutely. And you're so right about the imagery on that poster. Like the VHS poster of just the alien with the "I want you" pose is so perfect. It's so dumb. It's incredible. Some of the overseas posters that you look at like don't even really emphasize that this is a science fiction movie. You know, like there's one poster, just it's the blue background with like a plane exploding above 3 soldiers running towards you. There's no real indication of what this movie's actually about. It just looks like a war movie. But that American VHS release with the "I Want You" poster is just iconic and goofy and tells you exactly what you can expect with this movie. It sells the tone.
Yeah, and that alien is directing that "I Want You" at Joey, Timothy Van Patten's character. I think she does.
She does. She absolutely does. Oh man, can we talk about the chemistry between those two?
And we talked about it earlier. Like, it was so shocking. I thought she was going to save him. I thought, Timothy Van or Joey. I know he's like, oh, he's dying. I'm like, but the alien will save him. She has like these like weapons that can, dematerialize a tank. She can save Joey. No. He's dead. I'm like, no.
Yeah. Look, it's a very different science than dematerializing a tank
than rematerializing someone's organs.
Yeah.
And can we also talk about the fact that
yo-yo can't give you your liver back, Joey?
Sorry.
And can we talk about the fact too that apparently aliens, male aliens in outer space have mullets? So
they sure do.
Beautiful mullets, glorious mullets.
Absolutely, they should be. Yeah, I mean the designs in this are so like Star Trek TOS to me. Like they're very old school kind of sci-fi, goofy. Like the main alien is not too far removed from Robot Monster, which is just a gorilla suit with a fishbowl on it, and this is just kind of the inverse of that. It's a gorilla helmet with a spacesuit body.
Well, don't you dare talk about Ro-Man like that.
The guy aliens, when they reveal themselves, I thought their helmets were really cool, really different and unique. And again, obviously this is all like post Star Wars and everything. And you would think that the production design would be like, no, we need to make things a bit more modern looking, but they leaned in 100% to this retro design. And I think that was the right move to make. I think it what really sets it apart. But I do wonder if it maybe held, was a part of holding it back originally. But those helmet designs were really cool. And then the fact like their helmets disappear and they look like Star Trek aliens. And I'm like, okay, I'm getting this. I get what you guys are doing here. And this is I'm glad that they really leaned into that.
Yeah.
I have a question and I'll put it out there for anybody to jump in and answer it. This movie, would you consider this to be high concept?
Yes, I think it has a higher concept than what it actually executes on screen. I so much so to the point where like you could literally take this script word for word and just refilm it now, and like I think it would be absolutely amazing with like throw some more money at it type of thing. Not to say that this isn't enjoyable, but like the ideas that are here, I think are contemporary, especially when that one scene or that one piece of dialogue where, Joey's like, well, put yourself in her shoes, or I don't think they knew it was a female at the time, but like, they're in a different area, far from home, everyone wants to kill them. They can't understand the language. And it's like, does that sound familiar? And then all of a sudden you're like, okay, I get it. And I think that is very applicable to 2024. And I think the only thing, holding this movie back is its budget, but that's also what gives it the charm that it has. And knowing that the budget is low on this thing, I'm more impressed by A, how fantastic the alien looks, B, how fantastic the spaceship looks and the scale of it. And then the set that they go like the inside of the spaceship is just great. The production design for this movie is outstanding. Now that outdoes the budget for sure, the production design.
Yeah, and Corey, you mentioned that the line about being kind of a fish out of water in some ways, which is a good piece of dialogue that I think reiterates some of the themes of the movie. But it was a good one to bring up because my question asking about high concept, because we haven't mentioned it to this point, the thing that this most reminded me of was what probably could have been a fun Twilight Zone episode.
Oh, totally. Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Like this has a lot of markings of a Twilight Zone episode. I mean, a lot of those stories were about there's a number of episodes about people who are sort of in in an unfamiliar place, kind of wandering around. Also, there's a bunch of ones with a lot of allegories for war. There's one I remember, the Purple Testament, when it's a bunch of soldiers driving around and there's like this kind of feeling that they get, and they see the reflections in mirror light on the faces of people who are about to die in combat. And I was getting little like shades of that. But I just thought, like, yeah, I'm like this. You could totally see this pitched as like a Richard Matheson story or a Rod Serling story. Maybe leaning less into some of those like Commander Cody serial vibes, but like I definitely was thinking Twilight Zone. Definitely similarities to episodes that exist in some ways.
Yeah. This reminded me too a little bit of. It's like, oh, this is like Hogan's Heroes sci-fi version, with this kind of banter that they had back and forth. And I was kind of at times expecting a laugh track to pop up because it was just kind of like so comedic, but also to the fact that the scenes would kind of fade out almost like an episodic television series. Which, again, I didn't have a problem with, but it was like, oh, this is different. This is, but yeah, very much could fit in a different subgenres. I think it should be made now. Unfortunately, there's so many things that come out now that we have these high expectations for, like that movie Cowboys and Aliens or whatever that came out, decade. And you're like, oh, this is going to be fantastic. It's got great cast, great director. And then the execution comes out and you're like, oh, there's something left to be desired with this. But, this, I feel like with the right hands, let Charles Band have a big budget and see what he can do with it.
I think that this would be perfect for a comic book adaptation.
Totally.
Like, because it already feels like a comic book. And I think, Tim Thomerson's character very much feels like a Sergeant Rock kind of character. Yeah. And I think, honestly, make this into a two-issue comic or something, like how Dark Horse put out that sequel to The Thing. And it's just 2 issues, and just do something like that. I think this would make a fantastic comic book.
Absolutely. And Zach, you bring up something that it's literally never entered my mind, which is what happens if you give Charles Band a $50 million budget. And I truly do not know what that movie looks like. I can
tell you the poster will look amazing.
It'll have an amazing poster. I'm really curious what that would, because it's just literally never entered my mind. He is so synonymous with like these low budget kind of schlocky thrillers to me. I'm just like, oh man, yeah. What does that look like? Charles Band presents Fast and Furious Hobbs and Shaw 2.
Or how about a crossover universe with like Dr. Mordred and the Zone Troopers or something?
Absolutely. I mean, he wanted to do that. He wanted Dr. Mordred to cross over with Mandroid and Invisible and all of those.
No. I can see it now. I can see it now. It is Lloyd Kaufman and Michael Hertz and Charles Band present a brand new Sergeant Kabuki Man NYPD.
Yes,
$500 million budget.
By the way, Dr. Mordred and the Zone Troopers is a great punk band name.
That's an incredible punk band name, or even a trivia team if anybody wants to borrow that. Pub trivia, just be Dr. Mordred and the Zone.
You know what? About an hour after we finish this recording, I'll be heading up to final exam trivia in Manhattan. I might steal that as my team name, actually.
You should do it.
Jared,
do it.
Better.
I feel like you'll have some good luck with that one. Okay, yeah, and so we did want to close. I know you guys have an hour, and we don't want to take up too much time, but we know that you guys are old school Full Moon fans. I know Jared was curious, and I'm always curious too, as people who make obsessive lists about things. Do you have top 5 Full Moon / Empire movies locked and loaded?
Well, we'll let you. We considered having you separate and differentiate between the two, but we'll let you have it all in one
big chunk.
One big
to make it complicated. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Zach, do you want me to go first?
Yeah, you go first.
Okay. All right. Well, as a kid, obviously, by the way, Zach and I are both kids of the 80s. So we are the VHS generation, video store generation. I grew up loving, I kind of don't have these in any specific order, but I also tried to pick stuff that was a bit, not Reanimator. Like I wanted to kind of give something different. Robot Jocks, love that movie so much. Mm-hmm. I showed it to my wife a couple months ago, and she was like, "Oh, so Pacific Rim just like ripped off all the visual aesthetics from this."
Pretty much.
And I was like, well, what's his name? The director. Good Lord,
Guillermo del Toro.
Guillermo, he did cite that Robot Jocks was an influence. So I was like, so he gets a pass on that.
Yeah.
Dolls is a newfound love for me because I didn't watch it when I was a kid, but I adore that film now. When I was a kid, I watched Subspecies all the time. I was a big
Very
Subspecies
cool.
kid. I will throw in From Beyond in there just because if you listen to our episode, it has a very specific traumatic point in my life where me and my buddy, like we were too young to have watched it. We should not have watched it when we did. And then at the end of the movie, when Barbara Crampton gets blown out of the window and then her kneecap gets blown out, both of us almost threw up like in our laps right there. And I remember that. But I'm going to throw out, as a kid, I loved Troll. I was a big Troll fan as a kid. But chalk that up. Zach and I always talk about it. That's another movie that I'd seen a million times when I was a kid, but I haven't seen probably in 35 years at this point. But Troll was a big one. It scared me as a kid, but it was one of those was like, I'm scared, but I want to keep going with it. And it was kind of one of those first movies where I was able to like sort of punch through my fear and kind of go with the film. And it's not that scary of a movie, but it has some scary elements to it. So yeah, shout out to Troll.
Well, it's weird what scares you when you're a kid because I had no real issues getting right into horror from a really young age. Like I walked to my local video store around the corner from my old apartment when I was a kid, and it was right when Dream Warriors came out on VHS, and there was a Freddy Krueger standee, and I was like, whatever that is, I'm buying.
Yeah.
And so I became like head over heels obsessed, but only about 2 years prior to that, I could not be in the same room as the Large Marge scene from Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
That scared me too.
Yeah.
I was like 5 years old when that movie came out, and I remember it was terrifying to me. And then we liked the movie though. Whenever it came out on VHS, we shared a house, a 2-family house with my mom's friend's family, and they had 2 kids about my age. And we would watch it, and I would hide under the table when I knew the Large Marge scene was coming. For some reason, the clown nightmare of them picking up his bike on the chain hook didn't do anything for me. Large Marge scared the shit out of me, though.
Well, it's kind of like a never-ending story. Like obviously the Atreyu, the horse, thing, kind of got me. But what scared me was when that one knight tried to go in between the 2 statues, and he got fried. And then when you see what he looks like as a kid, that just scared the hell out of me for some reason.
Yeah.
Weird.
I mean,
Zach's like, whatever.
No, I hear you. I'm with you guys on all of that. Jared brought up Dream Warriors, and I have an old Freddy Krueger catalog that came out with Dream Warriors. I'm holding up for people listening. I went through and found this old collection of like posters, Freddy Krueger fan club. It's actually written from Freddy Krueger himself. He's like, "Hiya, sport. Thanks for writing me. It made my night. Now I'm going to make yours. If you join my fan club, and you better, here's what you'll get." And he lists the whole thing.
Well, it's funny. That's
what
I
watch my
imagine.
TV show.
Yeah, that's what I imagined if you ever called that 900 number, that it would sound
right.
like. Yeah, I was always like a little
he didn't call you
hesitant
bitch.
to do that.
But
He did. Yeah. And I have just from around the same time period, from between 3 and 4, I have it in another room, but I have it signed by a couple of people from the movie. But it's a sticker book, like a children's sticker book, where it would have like little descriptions of what's happening, and then the stickers were numbered, and they would make a scene, and they're just like so horrific, the stickers. And I'm like, it's just so funny to think that this was 35 years ago. This was a totally acceptable thing to buy for a child to have.
absolutely.
But
Jared,
now,
if we had another hour, I would be sharing my mutual connection with
I'm
you.
going to cut myself off, and
Oh my
now I'm
God,
going to put the pressure on you, Zach, for your top 5 list.
All right. I will keep it short and sweet, but my number 1 all day, every day is Trancers. That is a childhood favorite of mine.
So
and
good.
I will live and die on that sword. The fact that they've never released a Jack Death action figure is just devastating to me. I know that Full Moon had plans to do that, but didn't, sadly. Number 2, Terror Vision. I love Terror Vision.
Good
OD
call.
is one of my favorite all-time characters. And, we interviewed Diane Franklin on our show and talked about Terror Vision. We broke down Terror Vision. It's so much fun. Prison. It's an all-time favorite horror of mine.
Great
Viggo
fucking
Mortensen's movie. It is, if you've never seen this, everyone listening, go watch Prison tonight. Make that your viewing film because it is excellent.
And real quick, Zach, Richard Band kind of corrected us because we talked about on that episode, because the Blu-ray mentions it, that the Aliens score was used as a temp track for them to like edit to, and that's kind of why Richard Band's song, his music sort of sounds a bit aliensy. He was like, "Nope, that's wrong," and we were like, "Oh, okay, well, we got that information from the Blu-ray." So,
yeah.
Well, my question to Richard Band would be: was the Imperial March the temp track for Zone Troopers?
dude, I heard that and I was like, "Oh, Richard."
Right.
I mean, like in the Reanimator theme is basically just Psycho reworked also, but it works. Like it's kind of shameless, and I kind of love the fact that he's like, who cares? But it works, and so
and so does the Prison soundtrack. It's fantastic.
Prison's great.
We had a Prison episode recently. That's a recent discovery, and it's amazing. Sorry to interrupt. Please continue.
No. It's all good. It's all good. I will say the first Subspecies, I have a love of that because I just love the vampire genre, and I think it's a great love letter to kind of old school vampire films. And last one is a ultimate guilty pleasure of mine. It's not Dr. Mordred, surprisingly. It's Doll Man.
Good.
13 inches
I
with
love
an
Doll Man.
attitude. It is by far, it's not a perfect film, but it is a laugh out loud, hilarious, just ridiculous movie. It's not Jack Death. It's Tim Thomerson kind of going against type, and it's got Jackie Earl Haley post Bad News Bears, pre Nightmare on Elm Street, and pre Watchmen. So Doll Man. I'm surprised we will get to Doll Man eventually on Podcasting After Dark, but that's my top. That's my top 5.
Zach, will we get Doll Man versus Demonic Toys?
We will get the Doll Man before we get the Doll Man versus Demonic Toys, but we might get the Demonic Toys before we get the Doll Man versus Demonic Toys.
We got to Doll Man last year in the fall, and we will get to Doll Man versus Demonic Toys this fall.
Amazing.
Absolutely.
What do you want, a new hat or something? I love there's so many great one-liners in that. So.
Yeah, and it's funny because I love Doll Man too, and I think like you're right. Like Jack Death is like a cool, well-meaning character in a lot of ways, and like Brick Bardo is just an asshole.
Yeah,
Brick Bardo. Albert Pete at his cheesiest.
Yeah. Oh, it's so funny. It's such a funny guy. That's one of those movies where like I describe the concept of that movie and everyone's like, "That's fucking good." All right, that's just a good.
Yeah,
that is a really good elevator pitch for a movie.
I went to bat really hard.
Flaws, that is just such a brilliant idea of like taking this badass space cop and then bringing him to a planet where he's too small to do much of anything.
Right.
Yeah. And I went to bat really heavily for that movie on our episode. And then when we had an episode where we were talking about our rankings of what we'd watched so far. And I think it was for that reason. It's like, I just find Doll Man to be this like perfect storm of just super weird concept and kind of memorable, ridiculous imagery. Like Doll Man to me is a perfect midnight movie.
Yes.
Like, and especially like if you can pull a screening of it together with a bunch of people who've never heard of it or have never seen it, like it's just
that's the best.
It's one of those things that they have to experience. To really quickly, we've talked about it on mic. Obviously, people who've been listening have kept up with us in our rankings. I think to do it really quickly, Puppet Master 3 for me is up there in my top 5. Reanimator is one of my 5 favorite movies of all time, probably. Mm-hmm. So that transcends even just being Empire or Full Moon. From Beyond is up there too as a movie like I really, really love. I am really partial to Subspecies 2.
Yeah, it's really good.
I love Subspecies 2 as a movie. I sometimes just pop it on in the background, and I don't know that it would make my top 5 list, but I became a big fan of Vampire Journals, which I discovered as like a Subspecies 3.5. And then, Trancers is probably my 5th one, but we've had just some really great surprises of movies that we had no expectation for. Blood Dolls being one of them that we both, I think, were kind of dreading watching based on the cover art, and then both just had an absolute blast. And then there's things that I love that we haven't covered on the show yet that we'll get to soon, like Head of the Family.
Yeah.
Well, I
absolutely.
just discovered Castle Freak. Not discovered. I watched it for the first time a couple years ago, and I was like, "Oh, I really like this." Where why didn't I watch this so much when I was a kid? But like, I think I'm with you, Jared. I watched Subspecies 2 probably more than Subspecies. When I said Subspecies, I think I was just kind of saying a blanket subspecies because I can't even remember. Like, I would just grab them all. I'm like, "Oh, Subspecies. It doesn't matter any of one of them. There's probably going to be nudity in it, so might as well."
Usually,
it's better. It's better for sure. And then I would throw in Arcade as well as another one that I'm haven't seen in a minute, but I remember liking quite a bit as a child.
Lurking Fear, the cover for Lurking Fear always scared me.
I thought Lurking Fear was underrated. Yeah, I had a good time with Lurking Fear.
Yeah, Lurking Fear is one that like I was kind of middle of the road on when we recorded the episode, and like in the months that have passed since then, I've thought about it more. And I was like, just all of the times that C. Courtney Joyner has come up in conversations, and then like John Finch and Jeffrey Combs, obviously, and Ashley Lawrence in that movie. So like, that's one where I'm kind of like, I think that was better than I gave it credit for.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you guys both so much for being here and talking about Zone Troopers with us, and for bringing this to our attention, because I had a blast with this movie. Where can people find all of your stuff?
We pretty much live on Instagram mostly, but at Podcasting After Dark. But you can just go to our website and get the links to our merch store, our Patreon. So like the Coscarelli Factor, we covered the Carpenter Factor. Basically, we did 2 years and a few months, went through every single episode of or every single movie that John Carpenter directed, and so it's all under the Auteur de Force tier of our Patreon page. But then once we were done with that, we went right into Coscarelli, and we just dropped our Beastmaster episode. So Zach and I will be recording our Phantasm 2 episode next week, and that'll drop in July. But you can find all the links to everything on podcastingafterdark.com. That's podcastingafterdark.com.
Amazing.
Very nice. And I don't want to stretch this too much longer, but I do want to say, we talked about top fives. You guys are full-blown full moon fanatics for a long time. And let's just take a minute though. Just you guys, Zach, at least, you've got a little bit of like old school full moon merch, do you not?
I do. They're not, they're in a box, but I have the entire Full Moon comic book series that came out, the Trancers, Dollman, Subspecies. I think Reanimator as well. That might be from Now Comics, I forget. But yeah, I have the baseball cards, the posters, the calendar from 1992.
Amazing.
There you go with the comic book. I met Richard Band. I joined the Full Moon Fanatic membership club back in the early 90s and got the Full Moon card. And I met Charles Band, I believe in like 94, 95 at a convention, maybe later.
Oh, wow.
And I remember seeing and coming up to him and showing him the card. And I said, "Do I get anything for this?" He's like, "I don't think so. You just get the experience." So, but if you look at the back of the card, it says you get a free subscription to their Moonflash Fan Club quarterly newsletter, special promotional items available through our catalogs, invitation to a free Full Moon studio tour when visiting Southern California.
Oh, so you can flash that and get a tour, huh?
And then up to 10% off the price of Full Moon memorabilia. So I didn't take advantage of any of that. However, I did save like literally every piece of Full Moon stuff that I had. And
awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I love it. I love it. It's just a love letter to like that little kid who loves to draw creepy monsters. It's a love letter to the monsters. It's a love letter to the Monster Squad type kids that we are. We're all Monster Squad kids,
Oh, absolutely.
And I love it. I love it all. And I'm so glad you guys are doing a podcast dedicated to this company.
Oh, that's awesome.
Well, we're really glad that you guys could be here for this one.
Yeah, and like we've lamented before that we didn't really experience it as kids, and I can tell you with confidence that if Charlie Spradling was selling anything to me, I would be buying.
Well, okay, hold up for 1 second, because she actually models the shirts in the catalog. So here's a picture. Everyone who doesn't everyone listening, you can't see, but Charlie Spradling's wearing the Full Moon t-shirts.
I've seen these
That's the
pictures.
shot.
Yeah, these are iconic.
Or the Pit and the Pendulum T-shirt as well. So, and if you she's now like a big QAnon person. So I don't know if.
Oh, is she? Oh, that's a bummer. Oh no, I didn't know that.
That's an unfortunate end to our conversation. And I didn't so much.
Is it perfect? Is it a perfect way to end this?
Yeah, I mean, given what we talk about on the weekly, maybe it is a perfect way to end this. And if you're a fan of the show and you're tuning in every week and you like if you're a fan of the show and you tune in every week and you like what we do, then jump on to Apple Podcasts or Spotify and drop us a little 5-star rating and maybe a brief review if you feel so inclined to do so. If you want to keep up with the show and see what we're doing, we're on Instagram at puppetmasters_Castle Freaks. You can follow me at _Giallo_Jerry or Steve at Minotaur Matador. You can email us with thoughts and feedback and corrections and anything that you want to puppetmasterscastlefreaks@gmail.com. And you can also follow the show on other social media like X, Threads, Blue Sky, YouTube, anywhere where you just type the name of this podcast in the order that it is presented to you. But it's not the only podcast that Steve would like to take a minute to plug. Steve, what else you got going on?
Absolutely. I'm also the host of the show called Cinema Arcade. That is cinema and arcade mashed together because that is exactly what we do. We are watching a movie and then playing the video game that is based on that movie to see how they compare, contrast, enhance, detract from each other. I'm not sure where we're going to be when this episode comes out, but I am excited because tomorrow night I'm going to be recording an episode on Friday the 13th. So going to be an unbelievably fun time to talk about that one. Cool. That would have been out for several weeks by now. So go back and listen to that episode. And be sure to check out our show next week. And I'm not entirely sure what we are talking about because we're kind of recording out of order. Going on the spreadsheet order, I believe we're talking about a movie from 1987 called The Caller, which
that's the one.
Know nothing about. Yeah. So The Caller. Which one is this? I think. Oh, okay. I've seen this cover. Before. I have not seen this movie. It's Malcolm McDowell and looks Madeline Smith. Okay. The special effects by John Carl Buechler. All right. I'm excited. That's all I need to know. I just need the Buechler in there, and I know that I'm in good hands.
I've seen this one exactly one time. I will be seeing it for the second time. It definitely has some memorable aspects to it, and it's got some Malcolm McDowell in it. So I was gonna say you can't go wrong, but you could kind of sometimes go wrong with that. But not for this one. But yes, it would be next week. Will be The Caller. Super excited to do that one. And folks, just thank you again, and thanks to Zach and Corey for joining us from Podcasting After Dark. Definitely check out all of their stuff and tune in next week to see some Malcolm McDowell and Madeline Smith in The Caller. See you next time.